Once every year or so, I fire up a Modern League to see whether or not Modern Death and Taxes is a thing again that's good. And I've been trying this since 2017, so hopefully it's good this time. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU here for a Modern video. And today we're going to be playing with some Modern Death and Taxes. So for those of you who haven't been following my content for eons and eons and eons, I kind of used to be the Legacy Death and Taxes guy, and I actually started out my whole content creation career by making a website dedicated specifically to Legacy Death and Taxes, explaining all the tips and tricks associated with the deck list. And you can still find a lot of that stuff out there on my website, although a huge portion of it is vastly outdated at this point. And I want to start this deck with kind of a historical narrative. So it's summer of 2017, and my future podcast co-host, Brian Koval, wins an SCG Invitational with a Modern Death and Taxes deck that looks like this. I didn't really know Brian at the time. Like, we existed in overlapping circles, but I just kind of friended him on Facebook, fired off a message. I'm like, hey, I'm a major Legacy D&T guy. Is this deck real? Should I go and pick up the cards for this and play this? And immediately he fired back an answer, no, don't buy this deck. This deck was good for exactly one weekend. It was tuned perfectly for the metagame, and all of the things just kind of lined up perfectly to make it good. And ever since then, I've been trying to find that same spot where like Modern Death and Taxes is just like the thing that I should be doing, because I think it's a super enjoyable deck. But it's run into a couple of issues in Modern, in my opinion, as kind of a casual Modern player. One is that the format tends to be really fast, and Death and Taxes is kind of innately a slower deck. And problem number two is that Modern tends to be a really wide format. There tends to just be a lot of things going on, and it's kind of impossible to cover it all at the same time, because Death and Taxes is often a deck that you tune to a very specific metagame. And when you're kind of in touch with the metagame, you achieve this sort of like ultimate nirvana where your deck just kicks serious ass. So fast forward to today. Gabriel recently won an RCQ and has had some other good success with a Modern Death and Taxes deck that looks a little different from what I've played in the past. For my Legacy viewers out there, this deck is adopting a lot of the Hatebears that you might see accelerated out in some sort of initiative deck or White Prison deck list, alongside kind of the classic linchpin Modern D&T card of Leonin Arbiter. In Legacy, a lot of times you don't want to play this card. It's super play draw dependent, especially in an even faster format. And within the Legacy toolbox, it also stops things like Recruiter of the Guard and Stoneforge Mystic. The Modern version of the deck often just accepts, like, yeah, this is a non-bow, but Stoneforge for Kaldra kind of just fucks. Like, it is one of the most unfair things that you can do in the Modern version of this deck list, so they just kind of take that anti-synergy. And it comes at the upside of being able to play a Modern legal wasteland in the form of Ghost Quarter. And then there's always a second tier of these like Ghost Quarter type lands that are slightly worse, but their downside is often mitigated or ignored completely if you do have Leonin Arbiter. So overall, the shell here looks kind of like what you might imagine a 60-card D&T deck list would look like. You know, we're not going into the Yorion for that late game blink recursion. And part of the reason for that is that there's a pretty big gap in card quality in Modern between the cards you see here and a lot of the next best things. Flicker Wisp is considerably less good in this format because you have to start playing things like, say, Blade Splicer or Wall of Omens to help enable them to do their stuff. Like, Flicker Wisp on Solitude is still cool, but you'll notice that this deck is lower to the ground than a lot of other versions. A lot of times the modern curves will go up to 4, often specifically for Restoration Angel to blink and reuse various ETB triggers here. But modern has gotten faster, so you can't always get away with that. The sideboard has a few things that are highly focused cards, such as Sanctifier in Vec, which can help out with a lot of things. You know, it's a protection from red creature for your burn type matchups. It helps nuke the graveyard for your like reanimate scam type matchups. It does a lot of heavy lifting and occasionally will blank removal from control decks as well. And then you have things kind of shutting off various combo decks and stopping discard, or sort of more pointed Hatebears than just the generic Thalias and Leonin Arbiters. So let's see, like, is this the time that modern D&T actually feels good? And if you like what you see today and you need to buy some cards, please consider checking out Cool Stuff Inc. and using promo code ThrabenU on your next order to get 5% off. And if you're looking for other ways to support my content, consider becoming a YouTube member and getting early access to all of my videos. Let's battle. Hey folks, Phil from the future here. I have decided to cut round 1 from this video. It's just not good content. Long story short, my opponent is playing a Yawgmoth Thran Physician combo deck list, and they have 8 minutes left on clock after round 1, and it was just clear that they were not proficient in their deck list. So I am going to skip this round. I lose it 0-2. Let's jump into the actual entertaining matches. All right, I'm going to go ahead and keep this one. I think you could make an argument to play Giver of Runes on turn 1 over Aether Vial, because like playing a protected Leonin Arbiter or protected Stoneforge Mystic can put a lot of pressure on the early game. I don't know whether or not that is going to be something that is correct to do. This is where I just don't have the matchup knowledge to know. I'm going to assume that my opponent is doing something somewhat unfair here. And despite the fact that I have a Stoneforge Mystic in hand, I think I'm just going to go ahead and play Leonin Arbiter immediately. A lot of times in the past when I've seen like Chromatic Sphere, it's something that is holding together a Tron mana base. Feels like Tron. There's an Urza's Tower. And Relic is fine. So I don't know what sort of removal spells Tron is playing right now. Like, I don't know if my opponent has game 1 removal. I think this time that's an important enough question that I'm going to take a second to look that up. In quickly glancing at a couple of deck lists, it looks like there's 2 copies of Dismember that could punish an attack. I think this is an important enough card, especially until I get my 3rd mana. That I don't attack, I don't attack with Giver of Runes. Let's send it. Opponent goes to 18. I think I am interested in just immediately starting the land destruction. Passing. At some point, I can vial in a Stoneforge Mystic and pay for my own Leonin Arbiter ability. And, like, that's all fine and good. Alright, sure. Opponent sure does not have Tron lands. With a Lion Sash as one of the things that I'm playing here, it is like definitely slightly annoying that my opponent nukes the graveyards. I'm going to go up to 3 here so that I can vial in an Archon if I miss my land drop. All right, send him, send him. Opponent goes to 15. I'm going to go ahead and put in Archon. I think I'll wait on Stoneforge Mystic. I'm 1 mana away from actually turning this Kaldra Compleat in my hand into a real card. And I can still just use Lion Sash mana to eat things out of my opponent's graveyard. Well, that felt really good. So let's talk about things I can do. I can choose to play Path to Exile to have an additional out to large things like Wormcoil Engine that my opponent can play. Lauren is going to actively be good. March of Otherworldly Light sometimes will grab something relevant. It's a card that can be good in the early game to get rid of like artifact things, expedition maps, things of that nature. And super late in the game, it can exile non-planeswalker threats. I think I'm into this. Emerate seems kind of mid here. Giver can give protection from colorless, which definitely matters. It's not necessarily the best card in the world, but it is going to do relevant things in protecting Hatebears. Not overly excited about Sword of Fire and Ice. Sarah Paragon lets me recur Ghost Quarters and Friends. I'm excited about that. Lion Sash is probably expendable. Occasionally could disrupt something like a Crucible of Worlds, but eh. Then I think I'm going to go down a Giver or a Solitude. I think I'm going to choose Solitude. Like, Solitude is a card that I'm not unhappy to draw later in the game, but it does not tax my opponent. It does not mess with their lands or disrupt them in any capacity. With 2 pieces of equipment in hand, this is already a mulligan to 5. We'll take a 6-card hand. This is fantastic. I don't know which card goes back. Assuming I end up playing a Thalia, a March ends up being pretty awkward. I'm going to get rid of that. And we're just kind of hoping that my opponent doesn't go faster than I do. Hypothetically, I could use March plus another white card in my hand to take this out on turn 1. So the nightmare scenario for me is that my opponent has a second Urza land in hand already and just gets to Expedition map for the 3rd before I get Arbiter down, which is exactly what's happening here. Play draw difference is massive. I think I am going to play Thalia this turn with the hopes of ever so slightly disrupting my opponent's turn so that I can then vial in Arbiter and Ghost Quarter and knock them off of Tron. Thalia does not disrupt them. They have a Wormcoil engine. Now, super, super, super long term, maybe I can answer that, but in the short term, that's looking pretty hot. So, tap this. Yes. Put in Arbiter. Let's nuke the one that produces 3. We'll pass the turn here. I'll let my opponent attack me for 6. And then I wonder if I block with Thalia. Probably not yet. Thalia taxing my own spell is like definitely a thing. Alright, I mean, they would have ended up with it again either way. Yes. Giver's quite good here, actually. So my opponent did not do the Leonin Arbiter stuff properly. You have to pay prior to resolving the ability. So we take that. We'll say yes. I'll put in Archon of Emeria. I'll drop a Giver of Runes. I can now successfully attack in for some amount of damage. And in future turns, I have Giver of Runes and protection from colorless to stop the Wormcoil engine from innately being a problem. Now my opponent could just like play another big dumb card and I'm in trouble. Oh, fuck. So much for that plan. Or no, I guess I just Skyclave it and everything is okay. Let's leave this at 3. Alright, sorry, had to step away from the computer for one moment. So I'm going to hold Archon back and attack with the other 2. And I don't want to tip my hand about the Skyclave yet. So after my opponent attacks, I put in Skyclave, nuke Cursed Totem. Does a Dismember bite me in the butt? Okay, that's fine. Like, the important thing here is that I keep the Giver, so that I can give protection from colorless. So I successfully fog the Wormcoil attack. Oblivion Stone destroys my entire board. Can I march this thing? No, I'm 1 mana short of marching it because of Volatile attacks. So I play white and 1, and then exile this for 2. That doesn't work. I can Anointed Peacekeeper to make this cost 2 more. Then it costs 7, and this is 7. I guess this doesn't technically kill me. It's just very bad. So I'm going to attack with these 2 and leave the rest of this stuff back. Doesn't have a sorcery speed restriction on it. Alright, my opponent does not attack. So we're just going to chill and threaten Oblivion Stone. That's fine. My opponent can end up putting a fate counter on Wormcoil to keep it alive. Awkward. Okay, they are just going to end of turn nuke everything. And I don't get to do fun Aether Vial Trixies. And my opponent also ends up with 3 tokens. Got it. So I'm going to... Excuse me, I'm going to march one of these tokens. I'm going to march the Death Toucher. Because that can potentially kill a Batter Skull Germ token. Take 5. Any one other card, I think, ends up putting my opponent over the top. Sure. Alright, my opponent gets Filtering here, which is not great for me. Picking up another power plant. I'm not technically dead. I can go to 1, but I just don't see myself winning from here. I'm going to go ahead and throw in the towel. Like, I can play Stoneforge, chump block this, go to 1, but then I just kind of end up in the abyss while my opponent has 4 cards. I don't really know what I'm supposed to do regarding the additional copies of the exile-based removal for Wormcoils. I could cut vials. It's a little rough because, like, a lot of my best lines involve, like, having a vial so that I can deploy, like, an Arbiter and a Thalia very quickly. I think I should not have played March on the draw. I think it's better on the play where I can just use it as a 2-drop spell. I don't know, all my cards seem reasonable. I think, like, it's not crazy person talk to cut Vial for additional exile-based removal. Yeah, this is solid. Play versus draw difference is just going to be absolutely fucking massive this time. Yep, so we get to, at least in theory, try to stop that with Leonin Arbiter. And I am going to just go ahead and cast this. Aether Vial is the worst draw in my deck right there. Ooh, it is a Dismember. My opponent's going to have Tron very quickly. That is the card we wanted to avoid. I missed on land drops in 2 draws to play Anointed Peacekeeper to stop this from happening. And the redundant second Thalia ends up being quite bad. So I'll put one into play, but it is not necessarily good. My opponent only has access to 2 mana this turn, so like I do get another turn before they get to play their big scary card. And that's, I guess, a good thing. Stoneforge is not what I'm looking to draw. Let's see how bad this is potentially going to be. Anointed Peacekeeper. Alright. Wow, this is a really good hand. So I think I'm going to name the one... maybe I name Karn. Karn and the One Ring are both very, very good. I'm going to name Karn. I tax either one of these things multiple times. I'm going to name Karn because I don't think I'm super good at beating something like an Ensnaring Bridge. Is that legal in this format? I think that's legal in this format. Yep. So I get punished for not attacking first. Mentally in my head, I went, what's the chance that they have a second Dismember? Well, as it turns out. Note that the opponent potentially just like takes the 2 to have the chance to shut off a worse Hatebear. I'll pick up a Kaldra. But I think this game ends up slipping away just very quickly. My opponent gets to fog for a turn with the One Ring. Yikes, and play Karn Tutor. Yeah, so the old land destruction Hatebears denial deck is not outpacing my opponent's stuff, and the Karn shuts off these vials as well, at least in the short term. So, notably, the One Ring gives you protection from everything. It does not give your planeswalkers protection from everything. And I showed my opponent a Kaldra already. So that means that I can just go ahead and kill that Karn, and the Karn didn't get to tutor. So I've got that going for me. I don't need to play Sarah Paragon immediately. I don't have the mana to use its ability right now. So my opponent does have access to green mana, like they can play both Seiju and Ancient Stirrings. So it now just becomes a question of like, how bad is this? Bad. Bad is the answer. And they got worse. So the good news is that Kaldra and the Germ Token are indestructible. We're going to leave the vials where they are, although I don't expect that matters much. The Vault's okay. Send them. My opponent nukes the world. One Ring is also indestructible. Opponent is at 6, facing down 5 from Kaldra. So now I get a question. Do I want to knock my opponent off of Tron, or do I want to leave them with an Urza's Saga? The Urza's Saga right now creates a 2/2 token. My opponent probably has like 13 mana if I leave them with Tron. I think I'm going to knock them off of Tron. We'll just pick one of the other Tron lands. There's a good chance like they just get another copy. And then I will drop a secondary body into play. Opponent's at 4. And we'll see where this goes. Fuck, they had another one. Explore. Sure. A new copy of the One Ring buys them time. That allows Urza's Saga to tick up again, which is not great for me, obviously. Oh, there's playing a Wormcoil Engine. NBD. So... Actually, the Wormcoil is not crazy right now. I just have 7 first striking power? That's not the end of the world. So I will Sarah Paragon, make a land drop from graveyard, and pass the turn. If my opponent has something like a Shadow Spear that they can search up and just grow the toughness of this, or no, 7 doesn't do it. JK. Game's interesting now. So they're just floating mana. We're gonna eat an Oblivion Stone. A Warping Whale to exile Thalia. So the Wormcoil Engine attack is now valid to gain my opponent life. Oh no, Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger exiles my Kaldra and my Sarah Paragon. And at the point where my opponent has 16 power in play, and just like a very fast clock off of exiling this Ulamog, I believe that I am dead. Yeah, let's take a redraw, but I can't think of anything that gets me through 2 of these at the same time. We are dead. GG's.
Today's video is sponsored by Eminence Gaming. Their command tower software that they use to run events is awesome, and in January, I'm going to be attending another one of their events, The Boil, in Atlanta at Charlie's Collectible Show, which is, no joke, one of the coolest venues that I've ever played at. If you are interested in some CEDH and or meeting me, consider checking it out.
All right, I've kept my opening hand here. It's not necessarily perfect. Like, this Batter Skull is pretty close to a dead card, but I have 2 different early Hatebears, and I think that's about the best that I can expect. Alright. I have no early Hatebears. And I don't think I am supposed to Solitude myself in response to this grief. Or sorry, Solitude the Grief in response to its trigger. And then my opponent will cast some sort of Undying Evil or Not Dead After All card. And that's that. So I am just planning on, at some point, double blocking this and killing this in combat. But I lose the better of my 2 Hatebears, and I'm left with a lot of clunk. Having a Thalia with this Batterskull here is, like, definitely awkward. But here we are. We will opt to play out the plains rather than take life off of Horizon Canopy, even though it gives my opponent perfect information about which cards actually are in my hand. The 4 power turn 1 attacker is a little rough, but hopefully we... Fuck. Alright. What is the wording of this? With 3 or less. Ooh, it is a shock, so some sort of fatal push type card is coming. A lightning bolt. I have no castable cards. It doesn't make sense to Horizon Canopy draw here. That's bad. So this is now 6 hour per turn cycle, as long as the Ragavan can keep getting through. Arbiter's fine. I would like to just draw a land to cast Sarah Paragon, and then Ragavan, in theory, can't get in anymore. Alright, opponent does not want to use their treasure for Arbiter, which is fair. Okay, there is the land. Costs a life, but I get 2 Sarah Paragon. I am probably dead if my opponent has a removal spell for this immediately. Alright, cool. The issue is my opponent didn't want to use this treasure token, which means something like Fury could be something my opponent reasonably has. Menace means no blocks. I am on 5. So this puts me to 3. This is 4 damage. If I pay... let's see. If I play Thalia, this costs 2. If I play Batterskull, go to 2 off Horizon Canopy, I die to Sholdred. Draw trigger, ignoring combat. So that doesn't work. And it has to be Thalia. It cannot be Arbiter. Okay. So I need my opponent to attack with both creatures, I think. Note I am also just dead to a lightning bolt at my dome. This is not as good as my opponent thinks it is, because I gained 2 life off of this. So, like, this is a mistake, right? You just shoot that at my face, and I can die to the shoulder draw trigger. Oh, fuck, this does stop a Ganjo, though. It has a secondary benefit. JK, this works out fine. If my opponent knew to play around a Ganjo. So I can go to 3 and draw, and then be dead to grief. We can't quite pull it together before my opponent's initial creature goes through us. I like Path to Exile. I like Sanctifier in Vec. I could Leyline of Sanctity. I could Sword of Light and Shadow. I don't think I like Ephemerate. If I'm playing against Bowmasters, Thalia becomes less good. I could see subbing Thalia's first Sanctifiers. I'm less clear on these last few slots. Maybe Giver becomes less necessary if Sanctifier Invec is coming in. This feels like less of a Kaldra matchup. That can probably go. I don't know if I want these. This is kind of where not having matchup reps get weird. I could, like, cut my Aether Vials and just keep a higher density of good cards. Also play, like, a March to help with Ragavan. Let's play a density of good cards. This is fine, but doesn't do anything against me getting scammed on turn 1. I think I'm supposed to keep it. So we always go Plains Pass. It's then more interesting from there whether I play, like, which one of these I play on turn 2. If I play Arbiter, I have lines where I just, like, Ghost Quarter and Volatile Vault afterwards in the same turn cycle. But I, like, really have to commit. Like, the white-white versus white colorless is a big deal. I think I am interested in just getting the Sanctifier Invec down and not getting got. Like, this gets to wall Ragavan, this gets to stop like Fury and Grief from coming back from graveyard. It's noticeably worse if my opponent just like plays a second fetch land, but that's okay. Got some choices. I think I'm going to end up playing Arbiter and passing the turn with Ghost Quarter available. And I make it so that if my opponent fires off a removal spell on Arbiter, that I can Ghost Quarter in response, make their life more awkward. Alternatively, if they fetch a tapped land, I could attempt a Ghost Quarter. It's just like Bad versus Lightning Bolt, Fatal Push style cards, so I don't think I am going to actually fire that off. I think I am going to just chill and not put myself in the worst case scenario situations when I feel like I'm already pretty far ahead. Yeah, this is looking nice. So I'm now going to play the Vault, and I'm going to go ahead and play Archon. So there's Fatal Push on Arbiter. My opponent can't pay for the tax right now, so I can Ghost Quarter a land in response. So let's just go ahead and attempt to blow up a Blood Crypt. My opponent could then Lightning Bolt Arbiter or something like that as a secondary thing. Yeah, it is a secondary Fatal Push. And that's fine. Like, we traded Ghost Quarter and Cat for 2 Fatal Pushes, and I still just end up with the Archon in play. And we'll continue to attack. Very glad that I did not try to Ghost Quarter in the previous turn cycle. What do you got? Fable's fine, but I still get to just attack for 4 per turn cycle here. And I can use a Ganjo as a removal spell on this token if I so desire. Which I think I do, because then I can just use Solitude for whatever comes next afterwards. Do your looting. Thoughtseize goes to exile. You get your mana. I kill your token. That land enters tapped. A Douthie Voidwalker is fine. That'll just eat a Solitude in a minute. Sure. Send him. A Lightning Bolt. So that this card doesn't end up in exile with a Void counter on it, I'm just going to go ahead and remove the Douthie Voidwalker right now. I'm not 100% sure that's correct, because like there is a Fable coming. But Douthie Voidwalker can do some pretty annoying things. Alright, my opponent fetches, and a Sheoldred plops down. That's definitely scary. Sarah Paragon. Got it. My Solitude can't attack well. This is fine. So I'll Sarah Paragon, have the mana to Leonin Arbiter on top of that. I get an attack in. And short of maybe a Fury, we're in pretty good shape. Not perfect shape, but pretty good shape. Molten Collapse destroys Sarah Paragon. Very good. My opponent offers me a trade for the Sheoldred. They have 1 card left. It could be another spot removal spell. I think I'm interested in this potential trade. I don't want my opponent to gain life. Like, I am trying to just aggro them down with this creature. It is another spot removal spell, unfortunately. I gain a little bit of life, but that is a negative for me. A new Solitude. I think I'm taking out the Reflection of Kiki-Jiki over the Sheoldred. Like, Reflection of Kiki-Jiki has the potential to break this game open. I think I'm going to continue to attack. It keeps my opponent's life total kind of where it's at. I am not currently in any sort of danger of dying. I'm okay with taking a hit from the Sheoldred and then adjusting my plan to go on the defensive if I need to. I'd prefer not to, but I might have to. Just like being on the defensive versus the Sheoldred drain sucks. Stoneforge is good, though. What I get is a little difficult. I put in Solas. Did put in Solas. Solas on Sanctifier Invac is pretty hot. Yeah, that just like gets me back Solitudes and stuff. Okay, I'm into that. I think I'm going to hold back both of my creatures for this turn cycle, let my opponent gain a little bit of life, and then kind of go over the top with Solas. I'd actually like oddly like to draw a land next turn. Then I can go 2 mana, equip 5 mana, Solitude, remove Sholdred. Take your life. Orcish Bowmasters. You have double Orcish Bowmasters? Is that what's happening here? It is. Sure. Are you just going to attack with both? Yeah, okay. The plan is just try to aggro me down. Oh, that's fine. So this brings me to 8. And then I'm at 6. Then I am at 9. Actually, my opponent's Hellbent. Do I take 4 instead and then just double block this and take it out of play? That seems reasonable. Yeah, let's do this instead. Like you can, I'll trade Bone Crusher for Stoneforge. Then that puts a Stoneforge in graveyard that I can bring back if I miss the land for Solitude. Sure. I did miss the land for Solitude. Oh yeah. Send it. Alright. So I'm at 9. I take 4 damage on board. I can just return Solitude, pitch Solitude, end this turn cycle, and assume that I beat this board with Solas, rather than just playing double Stoneforge Mystic. I think I like that. The Solitude, exile Stoneforge, take out Sholdred. My opponent stops gaining life. I guess I open myself up to an Edict with this line, but Solitude every turn for the rest of the game. Well, I guess Solitude for 2 turns is good. That was a close one. The Solas did some work. I did not miss the Aether Vials. It feels like my boarding is about right. I guess I can make an argument to like play Lauren to destroy Fable. Arbiter definitely gets worse on the draw. Like, I could go bam, bam, play 2 Laurens, have 2 more removal spells, or Fable. I could also consider March. March is good against basically just Ragavan. Like, it can also hit some Fable tokens or whatever. I guess it scales up a little bit at endgame. These X3 creatures just have real value for blocking Bowmasters and tokens. And it's just like bad against a Grief or Fury that is just brought back. I don't know that I'm in love with it. I think I keep. Like, it's 2 givers protecting a Stoneforge Mystic, and with any white source, I also have Sanctifier Invac. It's like not the most exciting in the world. It's fine versus a Ragavan. Alright, we dodge turn 1. I don't like drawing a colorless land there, but I don't have a lot of say in it. Alright, no immediate play. Cool. Well, we start playing Stoneforge Mystics till the Stoneforge Mystic doesn't work anymore. So, I don't really know what to get. Solas is scary as this game goes long. I think right now, I'm more interested with threatening Batterskull with the first one, making my opponent answer like Stoneforge or answer Giver plus Stoneforge. Then second Stoneforge does something more relevant. Bowmasters, yeah. This is fine. Like, we've boarded out our X1 Thalias for exactly this reason. Alright, there's Fable. I'd really like to draw another white source. Hey, another white source. So now I can play another Giver and also produce Batterskull, and then Sanctifier Invac becomes a thing that I can do in the not too distant future. Yeah. What my opponent does with this trigger. I've looted away spot removal and a Sholdred, which are reasonable Magic the Gathering cards. It is a Grief. I will respond by putting my Batterskull into play. And then I presumably lose Stoneforge Mystic. I could lose Sanctifier Invec. It seems to me like Stoneforge is much stronger here. My opponent agrees. And no attacks. All right. We'll go ahead and Sanctifier Invec, and we'll start doing Batterskull Germ things. And we're doing this with double Giver of Runes protection, which is pretty strong. And at some point, I can also move the Batterskull over to Sanctifier Invec. We're not quite there yet. Sheoldred's good. So my opponent can have Reflection of Kiki Jiki and Grief in my draw step as a thing that they can do, which is pretty annoying. I think I'm supposed to just move the Batterskull and clock my opponent while gaining a bunch of life. I think that's better than playing more creatures out, at least for right now. So I have my opponent on a theoretical 2-turn clock, but there's a lot of things that can happen to adjust that. So my opponent draws and goes to 7, but in theory, I can Giver of Runes, double protect a Stoneforge Mystic, and then crash in for the final point of damage. In theory. If my opponent just passes the turn with all that mana available, I am probably not going to go for just doing that. Yeah, like you can draw step Grief me. Like you can take my best of these cards. I don't care. I just kill you one more turn down the line, and I don't know what they can do to get out of it. Sure. We're not gonna go for the kill. I'm just gonna attack for 6. Brings my opponent to 1. I now can play Giver of Runes prior to playing Archon of Emeria. And then this way, if somehow the Sanctifier Invec is answered, I just have a flyer, and my opponent does not currently have any flyers, nor would I expect them to have any flyers. And even if Batterskull is answered, I still just have 3 damage between this 2-2 and this 2-2. Yeah, so I think we're good. GG's.
Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com. Just the best place to host your deck lists online, just full period. It is. And I can say lots of nice things about them, or I can just show you that I have 328 deck lists on this site, and I think that's about the best endorsement that I can give them.
This is an okay 6-card hand. I guess I'm keeping it. The delta between this deck's best hands and its average hand is surprisingly large. All right, here we go. Urborg into Inquisition, and I'm going to lose my turn 2 play, which is going to set me back a lot here. Off the top, I'll take it. It's very much not my ideal, though. Sure. I now lose my 3-drop. And life's bad. Just full stop, life is bad. Life is a lot better than it was a second ago, though. So I get Stoneforge for Kaldra as a thing that already exists in my hand. And then I decide which of these other things I want. I think I want Sword of Fire and Ice to turn any threat that I draw into card draw. If my opponent is just going to keep ripping apart my hand in some sort of like Pox or mono black control style strategy, I think having that card draw matters a lot. All right. I mean, I'm going to just put the Kaldra into play and make my opponent deal with it. Like, there are removal spells in the format that do deal with Kaldra. You know, Dismember is a thing. We are getting the hit in. I guess my opponent has to answer Giver of Runes first. A March of Wretched Sorrow will do just that. Giver does not protect itself like Mom does. Ball Coffers. Very much a combo with Urborg. This was a classic commander combo for a very long time that I haven't seen much of anymore. A Karn the Great Creator. Very good against my Sword of Fire and Ice and Kaldra. Alright, so this is a classic line. So my Kaldra has been temporarily turned into a 7/7. The result is that I'm going to get to kill the Karn with the Kaldra, but then from there, I don't have the Germ token around anymore. And I'll just send this at my opponent's face. All right. Fantastic. I am more interested in putting this sword in play than I am flashing in a Solitude, I think. I have these Ghost Quarter lands that I could use to disrupt these. They just get replaced, like, it just gets replaced by a swamp. So if my opponent plays another land, 3 of their mana is 5 mana. Let's maybe not play and equip. Let's maybe play and Ghost Quarter Cabal Coffers then. The equip can happen next turn. Yeah, I don't feel the best about that. But I don't think, what is this? Oh, I see. So this is just a land that can specifically activate Urborg in one go. Got it. Batter Skull. That's good. Means I don't attack with Stoneforge this turn. We're going to go ahead and I'll tap this for black here. I'll attempt an equip. My opponent might fire off a removal spell. It is a March, which gains them a bunch of life. And then I respond by putting in this Batter Skull. And now we have a decent-sized body in play that can grow with Sword and maybe Kaldra later. And this also just gives me a recursive body. Oh yeah, I guess I could also use this for Field of Ruin. That's cute. All right. Yeah, sure. I'll pick up a Plains. We're not going to exhaust me of basics. And they do have multiple things that do this. A Damnation. That's okay. That's an incredibly awkward draw. Maybe the worst draw in my deck right there. Actually. Karn's very bad. I'll bounce by Batterskull in response. That way I can replay it. But I don't have something to immediately pressure this Karn. I have some good draws like Skyclave that could just immediately answer this problem. And Liquimetal Coating is the get. So my opponent can use this as a Rishadan port on one of my lands to keep me from redeploying Batterskull, which is really annoying. Stoneforge is a good draw. So I am going to play Stoneforge Mystic while holding up Ephemerate for Stoneforge Mystic. Which is like not the best because like I already have all my pieces of equipment. But if the choice is go to 0 creatures or remain at 1 creature, I know where I want to be. Fuck. Okay. Yeah. Rip my Batterskull. Note also Lion Sash is an artifact, so that ability is also off. Karn is surprisingly good against me this game, because all of my action is Stoneforge Mystic focused rather than other creatures. I lost the Lion Sash over the Batterskull. A little surprising to me. Not saying it's wrong. If the Stoneforge dies with my opponent's last spell, like, it's cool. Makes sense. Alright, I am about to lose a land. And it may be at this point that I'm pretty close to just needing to concede. More Stoneforge is not what I want. Yeah, I mean, I just passed the turn. I get another one of my lands destroyed. And then I have a Batterskull. Alright, so opponent's going to start taking out my lands. That's fine. I think this is my opponent more wanting to take lands out of their deck than it is to actively destroy my own cards. Yep. Okay. Oh, I guess I don't have to respond to that. So this is very good for my opponent. I think the scales have tipped in my opponent's favor to the point where I'm about ready to concede. But if they don't have a removal spell, I do get to kill the Karn this turn. And then I'm playing Magic again. Let's send at Karn. Alright. It's a success. Now what do? I can equip Sword of Fire and Ice to a creature while my opponent has no Karn in play. Which I think is what I am going to do. I think that's better than getting Batterskull ticking up. Or sorry, Aether Vial ticking up. Like, I think the Aether Vial is just, like, not super relevant. Yeah, that's fine. That actually actively improves my current turn cycle. Sure. Bleeding from the One Ring begins. The bleeding from this card is likely not to be relevant, with March of Wretched Sorrow giving my opponent the ability to just gain a whole bunch of life. But you never know. Sure. Send them on in, see what happens. Oh shit, I just get to hit them. Wasn't really expecting that. Hell yeah. Leonin Arbiter is not a card that I want to play in this matchup, and I will probably be swiftly sideboarding that out. I think I am just going to play an Aether Vial and hedge for the future while holding up Ephemerate for the Stoneforge Mystic body. I don't want to play another body into a Damnation here or anything. Opponent's at 3. Opponent is theoretically dead on board. Again, though, this is an instant. Cabal Coffers means big mana. Alright. Opponent goes to 1 off this. Is this just checking for information? What did I just lose? I lose this Solitude. Sure. Vial goes up. Vault is a card. I can use it to get rid of Cabal Coffers, but I probably just need my own mana sources. 2 lethal attackers. Orcish Bowmasters. That can make 2 blockers to keep my opponent alive. Which is a thing. My opponent's theoretically dead to this trigger. If they have a March of Wretched Sorrow in hand, they gain a whole bunch of life and they can keep going. I think I am going to drop Ephemerate and play Anointed Peacekeeper here. Oh, they have nothing. Okay, they are fully dead on board. We'll name the One Ring, and they'll die to their own ring. They do have to pay more mana to do this. I guess they could draw a March and stay alive. They did not. So these Leonin Arbiters need to get out of my deck. Sanctifier Invec is a very annoying card that I would like to bring in. I would like Sword of Light and Shadow, probably over Sword of Fire and Ice. Beyond that, like, I can play March to deal with some Karn targets. I can play Lauren for a similar reason. Lauren and Thalia are both X1 creatures that I'm not overly excited about. I don't think I want to play Aether Vial in a known Karn matchup where my opponent is also attacking my hand. Let's play a couple of ley lines for the Thoughtseize effects. How much power does it have? 1? 1. I'll play Lauren over that. I don't have colored mana here. And this Kaldra is just glued to my damn hand today. This is fine. I'll get rid of a Ghost Quarter. Like, the upside is that I start with Leyline of Sanctity. The downside is that I need to top deck into a reasonable 2 or 3 drop follow-up card. I expect that my opponent gets slowed down a decent amount by the Leyline of Sanctity start, but I think my opponent is currently favored to win this game. Sure. Cursed Totem. Why am I seeing so much of that card? Like, what deck in the format makes this required and actively good? Like, I've seen this, 2 rounds in a row? Yikes. I also don't want to draw with this because of Orcish Bowmasters. I think I'm just going to make land drops. I don't think an attack into Orcish Bowmasters makes sense. Yeah, sure. Thank you for thinning my deck. Alright, so this is a big moment. Like, if my opponent can get ahead with a Karn or something, like, they're in very good shape. Alright, deck. I'll draw with it this turn now that I'm not playing directly into Bowmasters. Yeah, sure. Lauren does not blow up that. It will blow up Cursed Totem, though. And then this turn I do take an attack. But, like, it is turn 5. My opponent is at 19 life. I expect this one is over, and it is just a matter of time. Yeah, sure. Yep, combo. Yikes. And this is 4 damage, this doesn't even kill a Shouldered. Sure, sure, sure. Oh, Lauren, blow up Curse Totem. Giver of Runes protection is back on. I'm gonna take another draw, but this game is probably not worth continuing. Like, my opponent just gains 6 life right here, and then gains another 8 next turn. Alright, I lose Lauren to this. Probably lose Giver to some other spell. Sure, that's fine. Looks like there's more creatures in the deck in these post-sideboard games, so that my opponent has the ability to pivot. I can try to string together something with a Gonjo, but I don't think I beat the One Ring from 30 life. I'm going to value my own time here. So now, do I want Path to Exile? Just take out something like a Shouldered to stop that. Ephemerate's kind of hard to set up. I'm good with junking that. Can drop a Thalia to play a second and be fine with that. I also could, like, now board out Leyline of Sanctity, since I've shown my opponent that that's a thing that I've boarded into. I don't hate it, honestly. Not that I love Thalia, but something like this gives me more flexibility in not dying to opposing threats. This is mid. It's just like it's very awkward to play Thalia versus Bowmasters. I don't think I am supposed to mulligan this. I have 3 mana sources after I've cut Aether Vials. I have a 2-drop play into a 3-drop play with some removal. But I don't feel like I'm doing the more powerful thing here. Sure, sure, sure. Dropping Flagstones is probably fine. Yeah, but, you know, Thalia versus Bowmasters, confirmed bad. This is why the Legacy version of the deck has cut a lot of things, yeah. Such as Spirit of the Labyrinth, to make this worse. Sure, I don't really have to remove those things immediately. That's not something that I'm worried about doing. However, I'm really gonna need something like a piece of equipment to put this game over the top. What are you doing? Is this indicative of, like, Fatal Push? Would I trade Fatal Push for Archon right now? Or not to? Alright. Take your damage. Not looking for more lands off the top. Send them. All these Ghost Quarter Volatile Vault stuff become very awkward if I have to board out Arbiter. Like, they just lose most of their power. I'm willing to take 2 more damage here. Like, this is fine. I'm not even gonna end of turn march or anything. Fuck. Alright. Send it. Field of Ruin is fine. Now my opponent can Fatal Push if that's what they have. Okay, I did successfully play around Fatal Push for a little while. And now I'll pass the turn. That is a Shouldered. Which is in theory very good, but this Solitude is about to do a lot of work. Alright, opponent did not attack into the Solitude. I'll take out Shouldered. Well, we sure are good at drawing lands. That much is for certain. Oh. I'm going to ship in here. Alright, my opponent does go for the double block. Take out that token, clear the board. At this point, I think I will go ahead and just use one of these to take out the Cabal Coffers. I'm running on fumes, though. I need some sort of mana sink or card advantage. Otherwise, my opponent's just going to slam something like the One Ring and end up way, way, way ahead. Damn it. I mean, like, I can just Ghost Quarter it, but that's not really what I want to do. So we're going to trade 3 points of damage back and forth a bunch of times. I think I should have Ghost Quartered prior to doing this because of Fatal Push. Little error on my end. Hopefully it doesn't matter. It does not. Not this time. Stop it. Alright, I take 3. Skyclave's not bad. I am getting into this weird situation, though, where if my opponent ends up having a sweeper, it is very bad. Like, Damnation's a legal card. Get out, Voidwalker. I mean, if they have nothing, I've just got a 2-turn clock. Fuck, the 4th fucking Cabal Coffers? Alright. Oh, okay, they have nothing. Got it. So I'm just going to name Cabal Coffers to make that onboard card worse. Oh, fuck, no, it's unless they're mana abilities. That doesn't work. Read my own cards before resolving them. Alright. What did you draw? Does it keep you alive? A Fatal Push with no Revolt. That does not do the trick. GG's. Alright, here we go. This is round 5. A couple hours later for me. But we're back at it again. I've got good flexibility in what I choose here. And we'll just kind of see what feels better depending on the matchup. Tarfire. Just legit tribal instant dash goblin. Is this a Tarmogoyf deck? I think Stoneforge Mystic is probably something that I'm going to do a little bit later on in this game, when I think it is more likely to go the distance. I'm just going to go ahead and drop an Arbiter and use it as kind of a stopgap to get to Archon of Emeria. Another Unholy Heat. Sure. And Preordain. This is great. Sure. I think I am interested in just continuing to constrain my opponent's resources with an Archon. I just kind of want to use my mana every turn. In theory, at some point, I can double spell in this game. Right now is not that time, but in theory, it's a thing that can happen. Multiple Archons makes that, like, a little weirder. I'm at 12. I think I am just going to keep this Archon effect around for sure and drop another one into play. Counterspell is fine. Again, this Stoneforge Mystic is the prize. I would like to hold this for as long as possible. Mutavault? Thing in the Ice. Okay, got it. I mean, Thing in the Ice, not great versus Archon. Paragon, awkward with my own with my own Archon in play. We'll just go ahead and bash on in there. My own Archon is so awkward right now. I think I'm interested in playing Sarah Paragon. It just seems like a good thing to have around versus Awoken Horror and other, like, red removal. Like, I just want to 2-turn clock my opponent before, in theory, they flip Thing in the Ice. Yes. Oh, I see. So you want a wizard. Sure. Weird line. This is the 7-power land. Yeah, okay, got it. So my own Archon is definitely doing some awkward stuff right now. Is Flame an instant? Flame is an instant. Opponent goes to 8. Let's Stoneforge. Yes. I think I'm interested in Sword of Fire and Ice here. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pass the turn. I have Volatile Fault available if that's a thing that I want to do. Tarfire on Stoneforge is fine. There's a tapped land. And we'll call that a turn. And I'm going to hope to hit my opponent in the air for 6. Ooh. Have things changed? I can play an Arbiter and then destroy a Mutavault. That can happen later, though. Show me a counterspell. Or I guess a spot removal spell will do it too. Ooh, do you have another flame? You do have another flame. So they're going to draw 2 and destroy my sword. I'm only going to get in 2 points of damage before Thing in the Ice flips. Yeah, it's sort of unfortunate how much my Archon has been disrupting me. Sure. That's fine. I'm at 17. Let's try to attack. My opponent goes to 4. And then end of my turn, they're just going to play some spell and bounce whatever I play. So it is ever so slightly awkward. I think I'm going to go with Arbiter. I don't think I need an extra card from Stoneforge. Spell Snare. Okay, so that bounces my Archon. I guess I actually end up taking one for tapping like this. I expected end of turn bounce. So now I will pay a life, drop a Stoneforge. I'll pick up the Hasty Kaldra, and then drop an Aether Vial. Yeah, so take 9 here. And then we'll see where this goes. This is just a lethal attack. I am at 7. I think I'm holding up. Well, I could vault. Well, there's 2 different mana lands, though. Alright, I think I'm just chilling and holding up all my mana. I don't like that I am in the defensive here. But, okay, sure. My opponent activates this. It only gets the ward 3 if it's on. So let's go ahead and just nuke that land. Sure. Alright, fantastic. So end of turn, I'll put in the Kaldra. And I think if I have 2 viable blockers, I'm a lot less scared of just accidentally taking 7. Oh, activate. Yes. Put Athalia into play. This is 4 damage, right? Yeah, this is 4 damage. This is fine. So I am just going to kill my opponent here if they block like this. Because trample. Alright. And then all the damage ends up going through, and we get to kill my opponent. Why are they playing Tarfire? Oh, it's Delirium for Unholy Heat. Okay, I figured it out. Alright. I like Exile-based removal. Sanctifier in Vec is a pro-red creature that'll be real good at picking up equipment. March is passable. Solas is passable. I've got kind of a weird set of things to think about. Like, Vial is in theory good against counterspells, but it's bad against Wizard, like Flame of Honor, that can just destroy random artifacts. I don't know how excited I am about it. Arbiter's pretty rough on the draw. I think I'd rather have Thalia's Taxation effect. I think I'm going to swap Arbiters for Sanctifiers on the draw. I think I'm going to get rid of the Ephemerate for the first path to exile. This Anointed Peacekeeper can go. Batterskull's not great against artifact destruction, but the life gain is probably something that I want access to. Let's try something that looks like this. Yeah. Reasonable 6-card hand. How many lands am I playing? Is it 23? It is 23, so I have 22 lands to hit. 2 draws to get it. You have a strong but not crazy opening hand, and I take a lot of damage off this Horizon Canopy. I think another 6-card hand ends up being approximately this strength with more stability. This fucking Kaldra loves me. It is glued to my goddamn hand. I'm going to need another land with this one. I have 3 chances to draw a land to just deploy Archon into Archon and have that be reasonable. I have a decent number of 2-drops I can draw that give me something good to do with mana. What is this? 2/1 Elemental. As long as it's returned as first strike. Sure. Okay, there is another land, and it's a land with some bonus text. That's not bad. Again, I would really like to draw a 2-drop to play on my next turn. But maybe we'll end up in an awkward staring game where my opponent leaves up counterspell or something. It is a thing in the ice. And I fail at producing a 2-drop for this turn cycle, which sucks a lot, because now my opponent just gets to like get really far ahead with Thing in the Ice before I end up deploying any pressure which might be walled by a 0/4 in the first place. Yeah. Second preordain. And then they stop. That's an incredibly awkward draw because I can't do that and some other play. So I think I'm going to go ahead and make a land drop. We're going to get a point of damage off this Giver of Runes, or alternatively kill Thing in the Ice. JK. Opponent goes to 1 spell remaining for Thing in the Ice. This is very awkward for me, because if I don't play a creature, my opponent can just like wait till my next turn to kind of time walk me. I can play an Aether Vial to start ticking that up to have it be relevant, but I have no low drops in my hand. So I think my plan is just drop this sword and just make sure that this incredibly powerful card resolves. All right, so they're just going to Snapcaster Preordain and choose to hit me. That's perfectly reasonable. And I'm going to need like a Solitude or equivalent here. Now the Snapcaster Mage also gets back to hand, so like Tarfire is a thing. All right. We'll go ahead and drop a Vial and then play an Archon. I can, in theory, equip Sword of Fire and Ice to Archon and then wall it, but my opponent's playing a pile of removal. Sure. So what now? Okay, so +2/+0 in first strike, a loot, or draw 4, deal some damage to a target. Okay, got it. Sure. Notably, this bounces non-horrors, and obviously it itself is a horror. I think I am continuing to make land drops here. This is a 3-drop. Am I taking this out, or am I taking out the Thing in the Ice? Oh, and Trample. Never mind, I answered my question. So, Planeswalker gone. I have a pseudo-immortal creature. I say that because, like, I know my opponent is playing artifact destruction cards, and it can get a little messy. Another one? Alright. So then the Trample just gets through my 4, and I do die. Got overrun. Maybe Aether Vial is just, like, bad in this deck, and I should not play Aether Vial. Like, it's getting in the way of my Archons, or rather, Archon is getting in the way of it. After turn 1, it's a pretty terrible draw. I think on the play, I want a higher creature density, so I play Arbiters. I don't have any extra removal I can bring in or anything, other than March, which isn't necessarily going to easily solve my problems. Okay, yeah. I don't have white, but I sure do have a shit ton of Ghost Quarters. So if my opponent has double red removal spell, this hand becomes pretty awkward because I'm just much less likely to be able to do this thing. I'm still going to play it out like it's the only thing that I can do, but life's not the best. A shock into a bit of a weird scenario. I'm going to go ahead and crash in. Send it for 2. Opponent goes to 14. I will cast a Giver of Runes, which is going to resolve. And then we're in a good old-fashioned stare down, where if I Ghost Quarter my opponent, they just pay, but they can't use their mana right now. So it's weird. That's fine. They've still got 2 up. And this is an ability that does not use the stack and cannot be responded to, just for reference. And that rules interaction may end up becoming relevant. Playing the 3rd Ghost Quarter doesn't really make sense to me. Let's just drop a Sanctifier while it is effectively uncounterable. We nuke the red cards from graveyard in case that becomes relevant for some sort of Murktide Regent style threat. My opponent's at 12, and I essentially have them like perma double Rishadan boarded while this is protected. Sure. Yep. How many Ghost Quarters? Send them in for 4. Dodged something like a Snapcaster Mage. Oh, well, I guess that's a little awkward to do, right? We're gonna pass the turn. And now my opponent probably just pays 2 mana to fetch. And since this ability has already been ignored, I don't get to, like, do cool Ghost Quarter nonsense right now. Oh, that sure is awkward. Okay. Now my creature's abilities are off, including protection. So this is no longer pro-red. This is no longer taxing. That's a disaster. Yeah. So I just imagine that I'm going to be unhappy with whatever happens this turn. I see. So this has two different targets, so I can't fizzle it by removing Flame. I'm thinking about whether or not I want to path Snapcaster Mage. I don't really want to do that, but I sure can't get through it right now. My opponent's at 6. I think I'm just going to do it and then attack them for 3 twice. This would be a sweet time to draw another Leonin Arbiter and just triple Ghost Quarter my opponent. Or we can draw basic planes. You know, that's fine too. That's like almost as good, right? Send him. Opponent's at 3. I have no gas. And my opponent presumably has a bunch of stuff that they've been waiting to do all game that they can now do. Yeah. I can pro-blue this to continue swinging on in. Okay, my opponent sees that line and proactively stops that. And now I don't get through thing in the ice, which is unfortunate. Let's drop this. Might be trading with a counterspell here. I'm sorry, what now? You can keep your Rampaging Pharacodons. That, like, kills you. You can't play that card. Very Temporal Pilgrim. When you draw a card, put a loyalty counter on it. Make spirits. Or do something gross. Yeah, I'm just going to name the Teferi. I don't know how many basics my opponent plays. I don't think I'm at the point where I start just wastelanding for the sake of wastelanding. Like, the Anointed Peacekeeper is not, like, a hard stop on this. It just makes it cost 7. Another thing in the ice as the draw. Sure. We'll immediately cycle Horizon Canopy. There we go. We know my opponent's 3 cards as well. So this is resolving. I'll take my 1, that's fine. Yes. I just get Sword of Fire and Ice and cast it. And my opponent has to naturally draw a card that answers that, or they die. I guess they could string together a ridiculous string of cantrips, just like Preordain into Preordain into Preordain, and flip a thing in the ice. They need a removal spell for this sword or something, very badly. That is an Unholy Heat. That can kill the Peacekeeper. You can play Teferi to draw a new card, but I don't know what you're drawing towards. Yeah. That's kind of what I thought, and we end up positive in the league with a 3-2. So, we end up positive in the league. I won more rounds than I lost. How do I feel about the deck? I think that this is a well-built Modern Death and Taxes list. I like what is here. That said, why would I want to play this deck in Modern? Like, what is the appeal of playing this deck? I'm not sure that I can realistically answer that. Like, I think the best card in this entire league was Sanctifier Invec. Like, if the reason is because you can play 4 Sanctifier Invecs in your sideboard, like, that feels weird. As we saw in the last round here, Leonin Arbiter is an awkward Hatebear, where even when you lined up with Ghost Quarter, like, it is possible to play around that. And with some slightly different draws at the end of that game, there's a very good chance that I just lose because my opponent stabilizes. You know, if they have a Flame of Honor and they destroy my sword, like, all of a sudden that game starts to look a little bit scary. 2 flipped things in the ice are coming. So I don't know that this whole Ghost Quarter and Volatile Fault plus Leonin Arbiter package is, like, objectively that strong. Thalia feels really bad in an Orcish Bowmaster's world. And we're not an Ancient Tomb format, so I don't get to skip to these. Like, don't get me wrong, Stoneforge Mystic for Kaldra is, like, definitely a thing, but I feel like Modern even has a higher density of removal than Legacy does. Like, I think my opponent on that last round was on, like, what? Like, Lightning Bolts, Tar Fires, and Unholy Heats? Not to mention the Thing in the Ice. Like, that's a lot. And so getting something like Arbiter or Thalia or Stoneforge to actually stick is a little rough, especially since Giver of Runes can't quite protect itself. So I think I end up in the same spot that I usually do after I play a modern D&T league, where, like, I do okay. I feel like I'm the worst deck in most rounds, but I put together some decent results. I think specifically I'm not a super big fan of this Ephemerate. Like, this deck doesn't have great blink targets outside of the 4 copies of Solitude. Like, blinking a Stoneforge is okay. I don't think I like this slot. I would maybe prefer this to be another 2-drop, or even just another main deck removal spell or something like that. Like, evoking Solitude and getting 2 things is dirty, and it feels really good when it happens, but this was pretty much my first go-to cut every time in sideboarding. Otherwise, like, it was good to, like, get to do things with Sword of Light and Shadow. Like, Sword of Light and Shadow alongside Sarah Paragon is an absolutely disgusting amount of recursion. There are some things to like here, but I feel like when you don't have access to something like Recruiter of the Guard or Yorion that gives you that end game, it feels really bad to kind of go down a card to play Vile or to go down a card to play Solitude. I frequently found myself just running out of gas in these leagues, and the Horizon Canopies costing you a land drop when you do have 5 and 7 drops in your deck that you need to cast is a little bit awkward. So you get that shaky thumbs up where I think this is a well-built version of the deck. Like, Gabriel, you won an RCQ with this. Like, I think there are things to like here, but I don't know that I want to, stake my claim in a major modern event on this list. But if you liked what you saw today and you need to pick up some sweet white cards, check out Cool Stuff Inc. and use promo code ThrabenU to save 5% off on your next order. Folks, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. See ya!